4 days ago, we had 40 to 55 mile an hour winds. We actually had snow on the ground a couple of days ago. A massive front came through, and you know, it's early in the year. You can see out on the trees. I mean, the trees are barely budding, and you know, before this front came through, it was 58, 59 degree surface temps. Yesterday I was out here, it was 47 degrees. Today the sun's out, it's warming up to 50, 51 degrees. But you know, early in the season, these fronts come through and it can be just devastating, but there's some things that you can do to try to catch fish. And you know, one thing that I like to do, especially, you know, out here today, we're on Devil's Lake, North Dakota, a big windswept dish bowl prairie lake. And a lot of times, you know, people talk about following the wind, fishing the wind. Well, on these soft bottom lakes, a lot of times you get that strong a wind, the best thing you can do is try to hide from it. And what we're gonna do today is, first thing, we're gonna try to find warmer water. The second thing is try to find cleaner water, because the water is just like chocolate milk. And so a lot of times when I come back out after a cold front early in the year, I spend a big part of my day just trying to find the right water. And then once I find that water, then next strategy is just anchor up in those spots, and especially use live bait. Particularly, we're using slip bobbers, and that's the ticket for catching these early season fish. When they're lethargic and turned off, that'll catch fish when nothing else will. Here we go, here we go. Here's the fish. There, look at that. Now these fish just shut down and get lethargic. This is the best way that I know of to trip their trigger. Nice walleye, nice walleye. There. Nice walleye, look at this fish here. Nice start, huh? Wow, look at that. That is a dandy. Get a hold of her. Yeah, there. Look at that. Yeah, just a gorgeous, gorgeous walleye right there. Get her unhooked. Yeah, that's a nice spawned out female. And you know, these females, you know, when they get done spawning, the whole key is these shallow bays warm up fast. And so they'll come up in these shallow bays, but there's no deep water to retreat to when these fronts come through. And so just a matter of just trying to find cleaner water and warmer water and just hunkering down and just waiting these fish out. But just a gorgeous fish, great way to start the day. What I'm doing, what I like to do early in the year, I'm running a bigger slip float. You can see that's an inch Northland slip bobber, and I'm just running a heavy weight, and a lot of times I run a ½ ounce. And I'm running on braided line. Below the swivel, I've got 12-pound monofilament. And basically a 14-pound braid, 12-pound monofilament, because there's all kinds of trees in the water. That way if I snag, I don't lose the cork and I don't lose the slip float. And what I like to do this time of the year, instead of putting a small jig on the end of the line, I just use a plain hook, but now I just put 2 or 3 beads, and especially when the water's really dingy like it is here today, I love using gold beads, and that leech can really swim nice. And typically you'll see, you know, even 48, 49 degree water temperatures, you know, that leech will swim pretty nice. If it gets much colder than that, your leech is going to ball up if you use a jig. And so if you use it on a plain hook and wacky rig it, it'll still swim in these cold water temperatures. And that's the key, is getting that leech to swim, just having a presentation that's just sitting in one spot. Fish can grab it, suck it in easy, and there's hardly any resistance. And when things get tough, that is the ticket.
While the entire Devil's Lake Basin is enormous with over 200,000 acres of connected water, walleyes can often be found in shallow protected bays that are isolated from the entirety of water during the spring. These shallow isolated bays are protected from the much colder water on the larger and deeper lake basins. When storms and strong winds blow this colder water into an area, the drop in water temperature usually destroys the fishing, so anglers can often catch more fish by finding pockets or bays that are protected from the wind and dropping water temperatures. The calm sides of these bays will sometimes have the warmer and cleaner water after severe storms. Some of the best locations are often a bay within a bay, as these protected locations are often much warmer early in the season. Look for walleyes shortly after the spawn to be found in the warmest water you can find. Find walleyes this time of year with your temperature gauge.
Oh, good. There, look at that. Another nice walleye. They're warming up. They're getting a little bit more, scrappy. Starting to come alive. That sun probably feels good to these fish too. Water's creeping up in the low 50s, 51, 52 degrees. Oh yeah, there, dandy. You know what's neat is that there's really nothing special about this area. It's just got the right profile coming off the shoreline. But the biggest thing is just the right water temperature. I think these fish are just moving around until they find a zone where they can be a little bit more comfortable. There. Nice fish. You're out, barely hooked too. They're still not taking it real deep, but yeah, just a respectable fish right there. There, now 2 fish in a row on the same rod. Now I'm going to do now, because you know you can use a lead weight, a bobber, or a depth finder to check your depths, but you know these bobbers will kind of roll, and actually there's a little bit of a transition. We're anchored in 5 feet. Behind us is 6, 7 feet. The deepest this particular bay here is 12 feet, and so they're really shallow, but the structure is really subtle. And so typically, you know, you'll just find it where a certain depth is producing, and so what I'll do is I'll just use my body to measure the rod, measure the depth, in the sense that just put the hook right on the floor and just see where that comes up to me. It's about right on my chest here. And so I'm going to reel in that other rod, just make sure that we're exactly the same, so get this other rod firing here. And the other thing too this time of the year is you don't need jumbo leeches. If anything, some of the smaller leeches will actually usually work better. All right, the trap is set. Bring this rod here up and check it real quick and just see where I'm at for depth. So you can see here, see how this one's a little bit deeper. So I'm just going to slide that one down until it's right in the same. So just use your body as a ruler when you're fishing in shallow water. Just get everything really accurate. Because the thing is, if they're dragging too much on the bottom, sometimes they don't find them and they don't hit them. And if they're up too high, as dirty as this water is and shut off as these fish are, they're not going to come up after it. So that can be pretty important, just finding that zone where you need to be. Good walleye. Oh yeah, look at that. Look at that. Big old females. Probably just got done dumping their eggs a couple weeks ago, and they're just looking for a little heat. There. Come on in here. Another dandy walleye. There we go. Look at that. Wow. Great fish. Great fish. Look. Look at that. Isn't that a gorgeous fish? Yeah, dandy fish. Dandy. Hey. There's a lot of different ways to rig these up, but you know, you take a larger size, like an inch and a half size float, and you know, use that heavier half-ounce weight. What I like about it is when you cast out, it drops down fast and it's in the zone. And it holds that bobber up, you can see it. There's times where the bite gets even lighter, where sometimes you have to go to a little bit smaller float, but most days day in and day out, you know, inch is perfect, inch size, inch diameter. And on the toughest of the toughest bites, there's times where we have to go to a ½ inch, but that isn't very often. In my opinion, a slip bobber will catch fish that nothing else, no other presentation will, when fish are off. So when you look at these early season walleyes on Devil's Lake and you're using some type of finesse with a slip bobber, don't think of the right presentation as being the lightest line that you can use, the smallest hooks that you can use, the smallest slip bobber, because in a lot of cases that's going to work against you. The reason being is it takes so long for the presentation to drop down in the zone. When I make a cast, I want that presentation to fall down in the zone immediately, especially if I'm fishing around weeds or flooded timber. I don't want it to take forever for the line to pull that slip bobber knot all the way up to the slip bobber. I want it to be instant, and so I feel like I'm in the zone fishing in front of the fish quicker, and it's a lot easier to put my cast into spots and get down into the zone and keep that presentation in the right spot. A walleye has no problem pulling out a ½ inch diameter slip bobber, no problem at all. And with a 1/4 ounce weight, or even sometimes, you know, those larger weight sizes, it's going to anchor that slip bobber down in the wind, in the waves, and it's going to have no problem pulling that presentation under. The amount of resistance is minimal, but you just want to be efficient. Make a cast that's presentation is in the zone immediately. It's going to make you a lot more effective fishing. You know, sometimes it surprises some anglers, but you know, where we're at today on Devil's Lake, this is typical on a lot of these prairie lakes. It's amazing how well leeches work early in the season, and you know, typically I'll start using leeches as soon as I can get them, which, you know, typically, you know, early in the spring, you know, once that water temperature hits 45 to 48 degrees, it really becomes evident where if you use minnows, you know, a lot of times there's just a lot of northern pike in here where you can't keep the pike off you. So if you want to catch pike, you know, definitely put a minnow below a slip bobber, but at the same time, if you want to catch walleyes, it just seems like the leech is the ticket. And the other thing that happens so often early in the year like this is that the afternoons are usually a lot better. And so a lot of times I might not even go out fishing until 9 or 10 in the morning, and typically you'll catch most of your fish afternoon. What happens in these shallow bays is right away, you know, the water temperature will be cold just from the cold overnight temperatures, and then that water temperature will bump up a degree or two during the day, and typically as the day progresses, the fishing will just keep getting better and better. Here's one. There, got him. Now that, look at that. Don't catch too many white bass on leeches. They love twister tails and minnows, but that is a big white bass. These are a fun fish on Devil's Lake. A great fish to target on purpose. Yeah, look at that. That's a big white bass anywhere. Look at that. Yeah, look at that. These fish have horsepower for their size. In my opinion, they're the funnest, hardest fighting fish in the lake by far. There, cool. From our base camp in Devil's Lake, North Dakota, we travel the whole Midwest looking for the best fishing bites. If you'd like real-time fish reports, find out what bodies of water that we're fishing, just to find the general patterns and techniques that we're using, give us a like on Facebook and hit the road with Jason Mitchell Outdoors. You know, when we look at Devil's Lake over the last 15 years, Devil's Lake really became known as a lake where you could use slip bobbers to catch a lot of fish. And the biggest reason that slip bobbers work so well through all those years is that over the last 20 years, Devil's Lake has risen so dramatically, and so you can imagine there's a lot of trees in the water everywhere, and that was kind of the saying, as you go tie off on a tree, you throw slip bobbers out and you catch fish on Devil's Lake. The reason that slip bobbers are so effective is that you could fish those areas very effectively and very precisely, where you'd throw a slip bobber out in an open area and then that bait would be suspended off the bottom. If you try to troll through those areas, if you try to drift through those areas, you'd be snagged all the time. And so slip bobbers really came into their own over the last 15 years or so, but now the lake has started to change. And what happens is the water rises, that ice in the springtime knocks down a lot of those trees, and so we don't have 10% of the flooded timber, 10% of the standing trees that we used to on Devil's Lake, and so the lake has changed. And so what happened is the lake was raising dramatically. We were fishing a lot of flooded timber. Now that the lake has been high and it's sort of stabilized, the weed beds have really come into their own. We've seen that trend escalate over the last 10 years. And so we're fishing less flooded timber, we're fishing a lot more weed lines on Devil's Lake. And so slip bobbers have been a staple for Devil's Lake walleye anglers for the last 10, 15 years, but now it's starting to change. So so we're still using slip bobbers a lot, especially early in the season. These fish are very sluggish and they won't chase after a lure. But as the summer progresses, we're starting to pull away from slip bobbers a lot more than what we did in the past. We're starting to fish weed lines a lot. And so that means we're running more bottom bouncers and spinners along the edges of the weeds, fishing jigs, you know, fishing those contours where the weeds stop. And on Devil's Lake, because of the water clarity, that might be 7 feet of water in some places, 12 feet of water in other places. Then obviously the classic deep structure where you control lead core, you can fish the deep rock piles. And that's always been one of the great things about Devil's Lake, is that there's so many different types of locations where you're gonna find fish from shallow to deep. And you're gonna find so many different types of locations that you can really, truly catch walleyes on any presentation you want. There. Walleye, good fish. This is just fun, you know. I mean, whenever you can catch this quality of fish, oh, there's a nice one. There's a nice one. Catch this quality of fish. It's hard to sit still at times. It's methodical fishing. You have to have some patience, but it's worth it. Right there, look at that. Beautiful walleye. There. That is why we're sitting and waiting these fish out, waiting these bites out. These fish get a little bit more aggressive, and you can catch them a lot of different ways, but I tell you what, when things are tough, this is one way that I know of that is just a high percentage. It's, you know, is most likely to work when, you know, big fronts come through, especially early in the year. The water temperatures are cold. You're dealing with muddy water. Slip bobbers are the ticket. Anchor down and wait them out on good spots and wait them out through the day. Remember, afternoons are typically the best, but man, just a gorgeous fish right there. Great. Oh, there just went one. Boy, that fish just rocked it. There, good fish. Oh yeah, nice walleye. Nice walleye. The way that fish hit, I thought it might have been a pike. Every once in a while they surprise you, especially these bigger fish. Oh, look at this, look at this. There we go. Wow. That is a beautiful walleye. Look at that. Look at that. Just a stout fish. Look at that. Aren't these fish just gorgeous? You know, that's just what I love about these Devil's Lake fish is just, you know, they get into this, you know, from here on out, all they do is eat, and they just get that, just that thick shape on them, and just that shoulders, just gorgeous fish. Get that fish in the water. See you later. Oh, cool, cool, cool. You know, this will work for much of the summer, but you know, later on, you know, these fish will get more aggressive and we'll go in these same areas. We'll cast a lot of swim baits. We'll cast a lot of crankbaits. And, you know, even now, you know, I've been catching a few fish on swim baits in particular on a few days, especially before this front came through a few days ago. But, you know, I'm not catching numbers of fish. But what I'll do is I'll come through here and I'll cast swim baits or cast a jig. And even if I catch 1 or 2 fish in an area, you know, then that's where I'll slip bobber. And, you know, a lot of times I'll find fish with even the more aggressive presentations, you know, pitching a jig, what have you. And then if I can't catch numbers of fish that way, it's amazing. You catch 1 or 2 fish along your casting a swim bait or casting a jig, you anchor down and spend some time in your slip bobbers, and usually there's a lot more fish in here than you ever imagine, and you'll catch them with these slip bobbers.